So good morning, everybody. My name is Divya Kanchiboda. I am from the Sri Sri Institute for Advanced Research based in Bangalore, India. And this is Dr. Neeta Magar.
Yeah, okay. I am also with the Sri Sri Institute of Advanced Research, very recently. But I was earlier with the National AIDS Research Institute, where I retired from, and then. So you'll understand the reason for integration and the comprehension why we are here together in our presentation.
So today we are talking about the context of research ethics in yoga, and what does it really mean for children and adults and patients. Am I audible? Okay. You'll have to excuse my voice a little bit. So in our presentation, we'll cover the background and objectives, and we've done some review and meta-analysis, and then we talk about the challenges in yoga research and what needs to be done in terms of context of ICMR new guidelines and the international norms. Just to give a little background, what is yoga? Yoga is a fairly common word now. It's an ancient practice originated in India about 5,000 years ago. And it's not something that only Indians do or one community does. If you see children from all over the world, they practice yoga. If you see them, newborn babies, they do yoga postures all the time, no matter where they are from. So it's something that belongs to every human being. It is not something that one community does. It is an inbuilt thing in all of us. But what is yoga? So most of us understand yoga as, just asanas, just bending our body like a pretzel here and there. But yoga has 8 limbs, which are yama, niyama. We talk about the yama and niyama a little bit more in detail. Asana, which is physical postures. Then pranayama, which is the breathing, regulation of breathing in different forms. Then pratyahara, which is focusing. Dharana, which is paying your attention to a specific part. And then dhyana, meditation, and samadhi is a state of deep meditation. So yoga has 8 limbs. It is not just the physical postures that we are so used to seeing around us, which has become the most common form of yoga. So what are yamas and niyamas? And why we bring this up is because they are the ethics that are inbuilt in the yoga practice. So yamas are sort of the code of conduct that a person is supposed to conduct himself in the community with. And niyamas are the ethics with which you want to conduct yourself in the community. They cover ahimsa, which is non-violence, satya, speaking the truth, asteya, which is non-stealing, not asking for what belongs to somebody else. Then brahmacharya, which is not just celibacy, but being established in one yourself. Aparigraha, which is a lack of greed. Shaucha is purity. Santosha is contentment. Tapas is austerity. Swadhyaya is self-study. And then Ishwar Pranidhana, being connected with your own self, the divine within you. Why I'm bringing this is because yoga has an inbuilt component of ethics inside it. But today we are talking in context of yoga research. So although yoga is a practice that creates ethics or imparts ethics, but in terms of research, we still need to go through the entire body of regulatory principles that govern any research, whether in terms of ethics at individual level, institutional level, regulatory level, in terms of funding and in terms of international funding. What are the regulatory practices? So just because yoga promotes ethics, we also need to ensure the yoga research also has ethics in it. And for that purpose, we had done a systematic review of 10 meta-analysis, which I would request Dr. Neeta to present.
Okay, thank you, Divya. Okay. We were looking at all the yoga research that is happening. When we started with the SSIAR, our organization, we were looking at all the yoga research, and we found there are lots of reports termed under the garb of research that were being covered, and then we want to look at what is really yoga all about. We looked at the meta-analysis, and then some of the meta-analysis which cover different aspects. I'm going to briefly talk to you about those to optimize wider application of yoga research as evidence, because what we really require is yoga after the International Yoga Day is a well accepted word over, and how can we bring more evidence so that we really bring the integrated aspect of yoga in our daily lives through some policy changes? We require enough of evidence, and research is a very good way for us to get that evidence from there, and we want to ultimately influence policy. So that would be our ultimate objective, to bring yoga, and we are very happy Dr. Kapoor is here with us. So maybe we would have some discussions related to that. We went through a meta-analysis and go individually with some of the meta-analysis on different aspects. Marcy McCall have done an overview of yoga intervention for treatment of acute and chronic health conditions in adults, and they found that with their varied titles, quality of all systematic reviews is high. However, the quality of supporting evidence is a little low, because the studies that have been done have not been optimized to a research level that clinical trials have gone, because there is greater funding available rather than the funding available for yoga research, because they have to do it, try doing it, if you can do it with whatever funds you have. So that is the kind of a limitation that we have, and with that the kind of research that is going to be done is, okay, they have now been published, so that's important. So significant heterogeneity and variability in reporting interventions have been there by type of yoga, settings, population characteristics, limiting the generalizability of results. So we require more evidence, we require more research on these aspects. Similarly, Mark Greenberg amongst the children and youth also found that in order to promote yoga research for the youth, it's very important to promote it. But then if we want to do some kind of research on them, how can we do it? Because we are dealing with children. What are the ethical issues that incorporate that? How are we going to involve that? Because ultimately we want to bring evidence, and to do that, good systematic research is very important. So well-designed experimental studies that are grounded in development theory and measure multiple indicators of change must be fully test the efficacy of such interventions to bring in a very good basis for us to promote that as an evidence for that. Similarly, another study has also reported systematic review of the effect of yoga on quality of life, the physical outcome measures in the pediatric population. Because this population is very important, young group, because if we can really promote a good health, we are talking of good health for all. So if we start yoga at a young age, we may be able to bring better health outcomes in future. So more research on this aspect is similarly required. Quality of life is a very important indicator. WHO already has come up with very good tools to measure quality of life in different cultural settings, and we could use those to do that so that we can do greater meta-analysis and use that. Similarly, review on yoga for depression has been done. This has also shown that it has an impact, but the way it has been done by each different studies is very varied. So there is a need for bringing in little more comprehensive kind of meta-analysis where we are able to compare the studies on a very strong basis, that we could actually use which methods are working for, rather than yoga per se, but very specific methods that we could use, which are the ones which are most, where there is greater efficacy of the same tools were there. So investigations on yoga as therapeutic intervention is definitely warranted. We need to go further with that. Ernst has also done another one on depression, using only 3 clinical trials on depression, but positive evidence emerged for depression and cardiovascular risk reduction in that. Evidence of effectiveness is positive only with 2 indications. Would that warrant for bringing in a policy change? That is something that we really need to discuss. How best can we really use this as a very effective tool for bringing in a, ultimately what research we are doing is important to bring in a policy change, influence policy, that is important for us. Ben Comfort et al. Have also done a study on the effectiveness of yoga in complementary treatment of general psychotherapy, positive and negative symptoms and health-related quality of life to people with schizophrenia also. Although the number of RCT is limited in them, in this review was limited, results indicated that yoga therapy can be useful add-on treatment to reduce general psychopathology and positive and negative symptoms. So So there are positive indications that yoga has helped, different therapies of yoga has helped. The question is how to bring in a change in that. So there was a need, similarly I'll go into, there is a need for systematic research studies on yoga for healthy and those with mental and physical health conditions. We definitely require it. Research on children, youth and adults covering health promotions through yoga to cover control group for impact of yoga using established measures is required. Randomized clinical trials can be registered in clinical trial register for publication, because this also becomes a question, because then we end up ending publication in some kind of a journal which doesn't have a greater impact factor. So that becomes an issue. So if we want to really bring in a real impact of this, so we have to take this from, Then range of meta-analysis on yoga research is varied with studies on adults, adolescents and different health conditions. Promoting good health, addressing physical and mental health conditions, using both qualitative, quantitative and mixed method approaches are very much required, and very few systematic studies on clinical trials and large-scale studies have been done, and we would like to bring out a study that has already been covered, so we would like to do that. Vijay, you have to say that. Yeah.
So as Neetaji pointed out, and you can see from the meta-analysis, the landscape of yoga is changing. It was just a practice that people did a few years back in their homes and for their own personal well-being, but with the increased adaptation from the West, and definitely more in the East also, there's a lot of exploration of yoga for disease treatment, for especially for the lifestyle-related disorders like diabetes, asthma, mental health disorders, and it is being increasingly prescribed by the medical community also as an intervention or as an adjunct treatment. That's why there's a lot of need to understand the scientific impact, and that's where the ethical issues come up. Because the science shows that it's right now, as in the literature, most common adjunct intervention for mental health, cardiovascular respiratory disorders, and review shows that it has a lot of positive evidence for some of these things, but we need to do better quality research with better ethical processes in there. So why is it so difficult to standardize yoga research? Challenges are, one, standardization, because some of these reviews we did, they club every yoga practice together. So they just say all yoga practice is just one, which is not the case. Different yoga schools teach different techniques. There's a lot of difficulty in standardization of the yoga practice and the quality of training. So which teacher is giving yoga, how well are they trained, what is their knowledge, how well have they been trained to impart that specific yoga for that specific disease intervention. So now India has launched QCI, which is definitely helping with the quality of trainers. We've definitely had smaller sample size and lack of RCTs. So we just wanted to take 2-3 minutes and bring out a very standardized yoga technique that has been taught for over 37 years in 155 countries around the world, which is called Sudarshan Kriya Yoga, which is taught by the Art of Living, and it's a very standardized, reproducible technique taught by more than 25,000 trainers across 155 countries in the world, and it is a yogic breathing technique. So it has the component of pranayama, like I mentioned, pranayama is a component of yoga, then Om, and then the rhythmic breathing technique of Sudarshan Kriya. And more than 50 independent studies have been done on this technique all over the world, not just in India, but in US and in Europe, in Canada, in Indonesia, where they talk about it has impact on several mental health and lifestyle disorders in both children and adults. It is shown that it is as effective as taking an antidepressant for a mild to moderate depression. This is a study by AIIMS. It helps with blood sugar regulation, and a study in US shows that it creates significant decrease in PTSD scores for war veterans. So this kind of work has happened. There are studies that talk about it improving quality of life in breast cancer patients, opioid addiction, and in AIDS treatment. It also has shown to reduce the level of cortisol, which is a stress hormone, increase the level of prolactin. It supports the immune system, relieves anxiety, enhances brain function and well-being and peace of mind. These are some of the research that has been done. Neetaji would she was involved in one of the studies on Sky, and then we were like,
yeah, thank you. I'm going to talk to you about the study that we did on improving quality of life through Sudarshan Kriya Yoga intervention in healthy patients. In healthy PLHS, people living with HIV/AIDS, we did this at Nari. We got an ethical approval. Of course, we did get an approval from our scientific advisory committee who said yes, we can go ahead doing it. Then we also got an approval from our ethical committee. And then we did a study among the randomized, as a randomized controlled study, where we had recruited 61 PLHs who randomized to two groups, the control group and the intervention group. And then, okay, so that means these findings yes. So then we had planned the study. We did a baseline study. We had 3 visits at 4-week interval, and we were giving them Sudarshan Kriya Yoga on a weekly basis, and also trained them to do this kind of yoga at home. We had developed techniques. I will come down to that. We used trilingual questionnaire of the WHO, translated, tested by qualified trained counselors, which were administered, taking that. We also took some biometrics like blood pressure, height, weight, recorded at 3 times. We also took the CD4 count, and this was done by our lab and clinic support. Well, this was the Sudarshan Kriya Yoga practice session, one of them going on. As advised by our ethics committee, we were not supposed to take pictures of people. We had taken it from the backside to document the process of what was being done there. So here it is. They're doing the street stage pranayam, the Bhastrika pranayam, and the meditation in different orders. So we got ethical approval not only for the protocol, the tools, and the translated versions of all the tools, the consent forms, the communication during the intervention, because we were communicating with our study participants that they should be practicing their Sudarshan Kriya Yoga at home regularly. So even the SMS messages being sent had to be approved by our ethics committee to say that we are not motivating them, but we are only sending them as reminders that this is being done. Then any social adverse event that happened, so also because as a part of any activity, that was also being reported to the ethics committee. So we were keeping in our ethics committee regularly informed about what we were doing, and this was the net. The results definitely show significant increase in the quality of life score by 6%, which was significant. Physical domain also, because out of the 6 domains, it showed an improvement in the total life score, in the physical domain, the psychological domain, and the level of independence. The adherence to Sky also we found, because it was a dose effect that really mattered. Those who was practicing regularly, they showed a better result than those people who were not so regular. So those also differed, and this specifically differed for the physical health and the level of independence. These were the changes that we observed in the control group and also in the study group. We saw the differences, it had increased. The changes in the control arm were not as visible. This pilot study definitely demonstrated that being a low-cost intervention, this is relatively safe for adverse, with no adverse event. This intervention can be considered for the PLHs who are waiting for the ART treatment. Because ART treatment is given when the CD4 count goes to 500. So those who are more adherent to Sky show better signs different than who were not. And there is a need for more sustenance of the Sky practice through effective monitoring and through the AOL centers. Because the same people who were coming for our study, participants coming to the clinics at Nari, so that was different when otherwise if they had gone to the regular places at the Art of Living centers where other people are coming and without knowing their HIV status, without knowing their confidence, and then sticking because they would partake in other activities. Improvement in the quality of life score of the people were seen and in all the domains, and this calls for studies for upscaling such studies for doing more evidence. This would also help us to take up more studies like the people who are now on ART, how they can adhere to the drugs, because drug adherence is a very important thing, because the moment otherwise they have different kind of problems. So with improvement of quality of life, drug adherence can be emphasized, and this could be taken at a local level where we could actually start implementing such programs, and we would be able to help out in that. So modern day needs for ethics in yoga is, it promotes individual ethics, of course, for the researcher, it's important, needs ethics for the trainers and the teachers, and most important, of course, the researcher, to protect the interests of the general population and the study participants. Like somebody said yesterday, that it is the study participants who are the greatest participants of our research. So we need to make sure that we give them something back in return after study is proven. So that would be an important responsibility for us, and this is comparatively a much low-cost intervention that is important. Comparative studies both report healthy and diseased population. Yoga may be as effective or as better than exercise for improving a variety of health-related outcome measures. Clinical trials, the gold standard, reported for diabetes, HIV patients, and hypertension exist, but there are very few studies, and we really need to do that. Another conference that was there just 2 years before Global Doctors Medical Association done at AIIMS itself, at the IIT. There again we had come out with a lot of studies on yoga where it was shown whenever it was done as a clinical trial, results were definitely better, but the funds required for that is important. Fortunately, DBT has come up with a program called Satyam, where we have enough funds to apply for a project if systematic studies are done. Everyone is trying to do that, and if we can get more funding for such kind of studies, we would be able to bring much stronger evidence that can help us to influence policy. So realizing that integrated holistic yoga as an adjuvant to clinical treatment may lead to health benefits beyond conventional modern treatment, we need enough evidence, and we must build up that kind of thing. Cost-effective evidence for yoga, efficacy and effectiveness is still in its infancy, but through good systematic research, we definitely can promote that. Research yoga techniques on breathing, asanas, postures will focus on good research design, and specific research outcomes can be needed. The third garden that you talked of may help us build up this kind of a program. I think that will be important. Funding for yoga research to support good quality research is a recent initiative and must be optimally utilized. We of course require more funding sources. Maybe AYUSH would be one very important source that we can look for funds. Yoga intervention research needs to follow same ethical guidelines as other interventions. That is definitely we understand, because we are dealing with human participants, and we would definitely adhere to that. So yoga research is evolving and requires rigorous capacity building for researchers, ethics committee members, multidimensional approach to develop systematic research protocols, stating outcomes very clearly. That means what is going to be our analysis, not looking at analysis at the end of the results, looking for a statistician in the end to say, look, something has to be analyzed, something has to be done, not that kind of a thing. Adherence to the regulatory procedures, ethical guidelines, regulatory, particularly for the children, adolescents and patients is very important. Now we have the new guidelines for the children, so we have to adhere to that. Focusing on consent, assent, both oral and written, because for 7 to 12 children is different, 12 to 15 is different. Confidentiality of different issues, standard of care that has to be imparted in the national interest of that, collaborative large-scale studies would pave for optimizing yoga research. And of course, one important would be also along with it, developing guidelines for yoga research with growing interest is pertinent and must be planned. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nita and Dr. Divya. And now the floor is open for 2-3 questions.
I think it's important to know what the control group is getting. Is the control group getting no psychological guidance, or do they get another type of psychological guidance?
Right. In our study, the control, the standard of care was given to both the groups, and they were also given anytime the psychological, that means the counseling was always available to them.
And many other studies, the control group has gotten in healthy individuals. They have, if they are suffering from if they have a condition like PTSD or depression, they get standard care and treatment. Plus, sometimes they get interventions like just sitting in an armchair and relaxing, or exercise, or music therapy. So there are different other interventions given to them in different studies.
Well, that is definitely thought of.
Yes.
Hi. Is yoga a kind of meditation, or is it different from sitting meditation?
So meditation is a part of yoga. So like I said, there are 8 limbs of yoga. So asanas is one limb, and then dhyana is another limb. So meditation is itself a part of yoga. So even the physical postures are a part of yoga, but eventually they should lead you into a space where you feel contemplative or meditative. So meditation is a part of yoga. So sitting up meditation is also yoga.
Sitting meditation is also.
Yes.
Also very complicated to me. I think that we always say the healthy life, including the physical and mental or psychological. So I think yoga is, of course, is one of the exercise, because in the physical, we call the fitness that have 4 very important topic. Is one very important component. One is cardiovascular influence, endurance. One is the muscle strength. One is flexibility. One is coordination. And the yoga is very good for 3 of the 4. So yoga not different from the exercise. I think now we don't call exercise, we call physical activity. So I think yoga is the physical activity and mental activity. And also meaning for the ordinary people, I also learned some yoga before. For ordinary people, not mental, just physical. I think that's good for flexibility, for muscle strength, for balance. That's very, very good. So
we can have, I think this was a very excellent presentation by these ladies, which is very, very pertinent to our country. As she has said that it originated from India, it is thriving in India. Now we are trying to prove, as required by the world, putting evidence into it. But specifically related to your presentation, I would like to know, what did you mean by social adverse events?
Because at NARI we were keeping our ethics committee had formed, advised us to form a coordinating committee for this particular project, because we were, calling our patients, our study participants on a regular basis every week for a, because the Sudarshan Kriya involved that coming every week for the follow-up sessions at the center. That usually happens. And then we were concerned that if they are able to come, if there are any kind of a problem, when they come to the center, if they envisage any problem, we had made arrangements that they are dropped back home comfortably. But one of the persons, one woman who was a study participant, had problem going back home, so we had arranged a vehicle for her to drop. But her husband had a little problem while he is being dropped. So those kinds of concerns, we had to make a report to see how that can be sorted out.
Really, that was a good invention, but there is no scientific validation of this term. That is not related to your procedure. So if you say that it is social adverse events, there is a tendency to believe that it is associated with your intervention. So it is. So I think Dr. Katosh can make concluding remark on this. I think he's the right person to do it because he's involved in this.
First of all, let me congratulate Madam Divya and Dr. Nita for a very integrated presentation. Now the thing is, yoga, it is not a sort of medication. It is drugless. It is a drugless system, so it can be added to any kind of medication. The point is that yoga, it is time tested. It is time tested in our country, but it needs to be tested in the laboratory of science, in the scientific laboratory. It is time tested in the laboratory of life, but not tested in the scientific laboratory. So that needs to be done. But the thing is, all traditional medicines, whether it is yoga or Ayurveda or others, there is a difference in traditional medicine from the conventional medicines. It means the prescription cannot be standardized. It has to be individualized. So this is the dilemma. How to do that? I think for that only we are doing this studies, scientific studies, the clinical trials, all those things. I think when that scientific, so-called scientific evidence will emerge, and I think that will help in making policies and integrated use of yoga along with others. So with it, now I will call upon the next speaker, Dr. Ferci-Fercap, to speak on issues, challenges related to international collaboration and application of AIIMS. Dr. Ferci-Fercap. He is a research officer from our Center Council for Research in Ayurvedic Sciences, and now presently working in the Ministry of AYUSH.
Respected Chairperson and esteemed audience from India and abroad, a very good morning to all of you. At the outset, I would like to express my gratitude to the organizers of this conference, Professor S. K. Malik and his team, and the Ministry of AYUSH for giving me an opportunity to be here. It's a proud privilege for me to be presenting in the presence of my mentors, Dr. D.C. Katoj, my mentor in the regulatory affairs, and Dr. Nandini Kumar, who is here, my mentor in the field of bioethics. Friends, the topic that has been given to me is challenges related to the international collaboration in AYUSH. And this brief presentation is mainly divided into 4 sections. First, I would like to discuss about the organization and the mandate of the Ministry of AYUSH, followed by why do we collaborate, followed by the recent collaborations that we have done, and of course, the topic of the presentation, the challenges that we are facing in these collaborations. AYUSH, perhaps, it's a term which appears in the Shastras, in the ancient texts, and it refers to longevity. But in context of Ministry of AYUSH, AYUSH is perhaps an acronym wherein A stands for Ayurveda, Y stands for Yoga and Naturopathy, U for Unani systems of medicines, S for Siddha, and Sovarikpa. Sovarikpa is Tibetan or Amchi system of medicine, and H stands for homeopathy. So AYUSH is an acronym for all these systems of medicines together. This specific dedicated department was established in 1995 under the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, and at that time it was named as Department of Indian System of Medicine. It was rechristened as Department of AYUSH in the year 2003, and on 9th November 2014, it was elevated to the level of the Ministry of AYUSH with an independent Minister of State for this ministry. So we are just over 3 years young ministry. The vision, mission, or objectives of our ministry primarily include to position AYUSH systems as the preferred system of living and practice of providing holistic healthcare for all citizens, to mainstream AYUSH at all levels of healthcare systems, to improve the access to and quality of public health delivery through AYUSH systems, to focus on promotion of health and prevention of diseases by propagating these practices, to upgrade the educational standards in these systems of medicine, to strengthen the existing research organizations, and to draw up schemes for promotion, cultivation, regeneration of medicinal plants, because these form the mainstay of these systems, and to evolve pharmacopoeia standards for these drugs. This is in brief the organization of the ministry. We have two central regulatory bodies, Central Council of Indian Medicine and Central Council of Homeopathy. We have 5 central research councils, 1 council exclusively dedicated to research in Ayurveda, 1 to Siddha, 1 to Unani, 1 to Homeopathy, and 1 to Yoga and Naturopathy. We have 11 national institutes across the country. We have 3 statutory bodies, Drug Technical Advisory Board and Drug Consultative Committee to advise the Government of India in regulatory matters related to these systems. And we have a recently constituted Pharmacopoeia Commission of Indian Medicine and Homeopathy. We have 2 central pharmacopoeia laboratories, the Pharmacopoeia Laboratory of Indian Medicine and the Homeopathy Pharmacopoeia Laboratory. And we have a dedicated body for promotion of cultivation and propagation of medicinal plants, that is called the National Medicinal Plants Board. And the ministry has 1 dedicated drug manufacturing unit also. Regarding other infrastructural facilities of the Ministry of AYUSH present across the country, we have more than 3,600 hospitals across the country, collectively for Ayurveda, Siddha, Unani, Yoga, and Naturopathy, and Homeopathy including, with a bed strength of more than 56,000 beds. We have more than 500 colleges across the country, and we have more than 8,600 manufacturing units for these drugs across the country. Now, why do we collaborate? Or for that reason, why does anybody require to collaborate? Yes, perhaps collaboration helps you in self-awareness, to understand what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, so that you can partner with the complement partners and you can achieve your target and goal. Of course, it's always said that when one person is working, things are a bit difficult. When 2 work together and when a team works together, it's easier to achieve the goal. Perhaps that is the reason that ministry collaborates. Creative aberration is another reason to collaborate. Aberration otherwise goes in negative connotation, means aberration means friction which retards the progress. But when this difference in opinion leads to a friction, we tend to convert it into a creative outcome so that better goals can be achieved. In the initial stages, as I said that we are an infant ministry, so in the initial stages when we collaborate, things may not seem to go in the right direction initially, but we need to take a long view. In the long time, in the long term, the partnership may be salvageable. And of course, collaborations do offer a learning opportunity for all the collaborative partners. So with these objectives, with these goals, with these understandings, Ministry of AYUSH has been collaborating in fact in the recent past, and on several forums in several countries at several levels we have been able to collaborate and initiate certain collaborative activities. Some of them include, like we have country-to-country MOUs, Memorandum of Understandings with 11 countries across the globe, and this is an umbrella agreement where the different dimensions regarding promotion of traditional systems of medicine are envisaged. And these countries include Nepal, Bangladesh, Hungary, Trinidad and Tobago, Malaysia, China, Mauritius, Mongolia, Turkmenistan, Myanmar, and Germany. We have specific MOUs with several countries, like institutions of research organizations or hospital care or healthcare facilities of specific countries to achieve a specific objective, means to conduct research on a particular topic. And recently, done MOUs in the last 3-4 years for taking collaborative research across several countries. These include with Charity University in Germany, with Royal London Hospital in UK, with National Center for Natural Products in University of Mississippi, USA, with Ontario College of Homeopathy, with WHO headquarters for collaboration activities in the field of traditional medicine, with the United States Pharmacopoeia Convention and Pharmacopoeia Commission of Indian Medicine, with University of Menominee, Argentina, with Israel, with Canada, with United States Pharmacopoeia Commission, with Scientific Society for Homeopathy in Germany, with Rio de Janeiro, with Malaysia, and with France. MOUs have been done by the Ministry of AYUSH for setting up academic chairs, in the dedicated universities across several countries. Most important of them include the University of Debrecen, Hungary, University of West Indies in Trinidad and Tobago, University in South Africa, University in Thailand, People's Friendship University in Russia, a university in Indonesia, in Slovenia, And we have set up a chair in Armenia, chair in Latvia, in Argentina, in Mexico, and in France. Apart from this, there is a provision, for the promotion and for dissemination of authentic information regarding these systems. There is a provision in the Ministry of AYUSH to set up AYUSH information cells. So the Indian embassies located in the other countries, they provide us the space, and the Ministry of AYUSH provides the initial corpus funding, followed by recurring funding every year. And we provide them authentic IEC material and other audiovisual aids, so that whosoever is interested, maybe the practitioners, maybe the patients, maybe the lay public, they can access these information so that they have an authentic view about these systems of medicine. So as on today, we have 28 such AYUSH information cells across 25 countries. Recently, Dr. Katuch was instrumental in getting this done, and India-China College of Yoga was established in the Yunnan Minzu University in China. And although it was an MOU signed between the university and the Indian Council for Cultural Relations, yet all the technical inputs were provided by the Ministry of AYUSH for the setting up of this college. We have recently completed a collaborative study with the Charité University in Germany. This was perhaps one of the leading and one of the major collaborative studies conducted by the Ministry of AYUSH through one of its research councils called Central Council for Research in Ayurvedic Sciences. This was a collaborative study on osteoarthritis. This started nearly 4 years ago, and this is recently completed. An interim article has been published, and the final article is under publication, which will soon be in the public domain. And this clinical trial is registered on the clinicaltrials.gov. So in this, the technical inputs, the treatment regimen was suggested by the Ministry of AYUSH and CCRAS, whereas it was executed in this Charité University in Germany. There was an Ayurvedic collaborator also there involved in the screening of the patients and administration of the AYUSH interventions and assessment of the results. This is also an important step taken by the Ministry of AYUSH towards international collaboration. Maybe this is from the defensive point of view, but it helps in a healthier collaboration between Ministry of AYUSH and other countries. There were in the recent past, there were instances of certain patents granted to other countries, scientists of the other countries regarding Indian systems of medicine. So to take care of such things, the Traditional Knowledge Digital Library database was established, and it is a collaborative project between the Ministry of AYUSH and the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, Government of India. And the objective of this project is to document the ancient traditional knowledge of the country and to prevent it from misappropriation by virtue of biopiracy or wrong patents. So in this project, drug formulations from classical Ayurveda, Siddha, Unani, practices from classical texts, the authoritative texts which are mentioned in the Drugs and Cosmetics Act, they have been digitized, and this whole digitized database has been translated in 5 languages, namely English, German, French, Spanish, and Japanese. What happened that whenever a patent was filed across any country, the patent office of that country would see the prior art, and when they do not find the prior art in public domain, they would grant a patent. But now, this database, this TKDL database, has been given access to 9 patent offices across the globe. So now, whenever any patent is filed in any of these patent offices, when they try to see for the prior art, they access this database and they see, oh, this knowledge is already available in the traditional Indian system of medicine. So this prevents, duplication of efforts, and this prevents a sort of misappropriation of the patents. Of course, when we initiate anything, there are always impediments, there are always problems, struggles, and Ministry of AYUSH is nothing new in this chapter. Yes, when we collaborate, there are initial hiccups, there are problems, which we have tried to consolidate and present in this slide. Whenever we try to collaborate, whether it is in terms of research or whether it is in terms of healthcare facilities, extending healthcare facilities, we face all these problems, and which we have been able to resolve in all these countries with which we have collaborative agreements, and with several other countries we are in the process of negotiating with them. So the most important thing is that whenever it comes to administration of a drug, our drugs are not recognized as a drug in majority of the countries. There are very few countries which recognize these systems as systems of medicine and which recognize our drugs as drugs. So most of the countries, they consider our drugs as dietetic things or as food supplements like this. So it becomes a bit difficult from the regulatory point of view to conduct a clinical research or to document the results and publish them. Moreover, in our systems of medicine, in Ayurveda, Siddha, Unani systems of medicine, it is usually not a single drug which is given as an intervention. It is usually a regimen comprising of more than one number of drugs, along with diets and lifestyle modifications, certain do's and don'ts, which form an essential mainstay of our system of management of the things. IPR issues I've already discussed. Whenever we collaborate in the MOU, we have an IPR clause. So many a times we find difficulty in negotiating on that IPR clause. Recently, also with a big developed country, we are about to negotiate an MOU, but that is withheld for last more than 1 year because of some customization which they are deciding in the IPR clause and which India country is trying to defend. Difference in nomenclature is again a big impediment. In ancient texts and our authoritative texts, a disease or a syndrome is mentioned in our own language in Sanskrit and Hindi, which cannot be exactly translated in the English language or other languages. So many times it becomes a problem. A drug which is indicated for a particular condition in our system of medicine, that condition or that disease or that diagnosis doesn't translate exactly into their own system of medicine and in their own language. So it becomes difficult to make each other understand that what is the diagnosis and what is the treatment of choice. Interpretation of MOU. Interestingly, I share a recent example. We are in negotiations with one of the neighboring countries for a country-to-country MOU. Everything was done. The MOU was about to be signed nearly 2-3 years ago, but it was held because of one clause, because of some miscommunication or difference in understandings. Recently, it has been clarified. Interestingly, the MOU was for setting up of a chair. So the university concerned from that country recently, opened up their mind and they said, we are not able to negotiate, we are not ready to sign, we are not able to make up our mind because, if your person comes and becomes a chairman in our university, what would our chairman do? So we were not able to, communicate them probably, and our MOU language probably was not appropriate enough that we could make them understand that this chair would be in fact reporting to your chairman. So this chair doesn't mean that your chairman will vanish and our person will become a chairman. Our chair is intended to disseminate the authentic information about our systems. That is the only intention. So many times in international collaborations, these things, these small little things become an impediment. Non-availability of authentic literature, yes, of course, this is a big impediment. Initially, when we collaborate, we exchange the literature, we provide our pharmacopoeias and other things, but you cannot give everything in their language. So, non-availability of authentic literature indeed becomes an impediment when they want to confirm certain things, when they want to explore our literature. There are certain limitations. So, perhaps with that objective only, we have been setting up AYUSH information cells. Quality standards, yes, of course, with most of the countries where we collaborate, these systems are not recognized as systems of medicine, so they have the quality standards well in place, but for synthetic drugs, for chemical drugs. So when it comes to extrapolation of those chemicals, those standards to traditional drugs, the things become highly complicated. So many times it becomes difficult to convince them that these are indeed standardized drugs and can be safely used. Insurance coverage is again a big issue. In most of the countries, the healthcare system is governed by the insurance things. In India also, AYUSH systems have recently been included in the insurance systems, and recently we have developed the guidelines, the benchmark rates and the procedures for which the Insurance Regulatory Development Authority of India has agreed to, and now most of the insurance companies of our country are offering coverage of AYUSH systems of medicines. So in other countries, these systems are not covered, so because of that, conducting researches, etc. becomes a bit difficult because of insurance clauses. Availability of Ayurveda, Siddha, Unani and homeopathy drugs in some countries is a problem, and recently we faced an issue with one of the countries where we wanted to collaborate. The AYUSH intervention, the Ayurveda intervention which was agreed upon was sent from India, but unfortunately on their parameters they didn't accept that drug and it was not qualified. Then from one of the neighboring countries, interestingly, that drug was procured and the clinical trial was done. National treatment is again a clause. In the TRIPS agreement, there is a clause that every country would extend national treatment to all the products which are coming into that country. Like whatever standards you follow for your country, you do not expect more standards or more rigorous standards from the country of import in your country. But this has been happening recently with one of the neighboring countries where our products were going on in routine, where our products were exported. Recently they have stopped accepting our products. They say we want these products only from the WHO GMP Good Manufacturing Practices Certified Manufacturing Units. Whereas, interestingly, in that country itself, there is no provision of WHO GMP. There is not even a single manufacturer of WHO GMP accreditation available in that country, but they want India to supply the drugs from WHO GMP certified companies. So again, negotiations are going on, some solution will come, but things become difficult and take some time. In most of the collaborations that we see, the funding is almost unilateral, and when it's a unilateral funding, the things become a bit sluggish and a bit difficult to execute. So this is although a minor thing, but yes, this is one of the factors. Many a times the countries are, the collaborators are compelled, or rather they are tempted to procure these interventions, the trial drugs, from internet sources or other non-reliable sources. And then it becomes a major quality concern. When they do not procure the medicines from authentic sources or from the governmental resources, it becomes difficult to vouch for their safety, efficacy, and quality standards. And many a times, we hear in the media or in print reports that Ayurvedic drugs or Siddha drugs, they are laden with heavy metals and contaminants and all those things. Most of the times, these things are because of, procurement from non-reliable sources, which do not guarantee any proper storage and proper transportation and other things. In India, as of now, the National Regulatory Authority is the Drug Controller General of India, and for AYUSH systems of medicine, we do not have a central regulatory authority in place. The Government of India has recently given a go-ahead, and very soon we shall be having a vertical structure in the Central Drug Standards Control Organization, and there would be a national regulator for Ayurveda, Siddha, Unani drugs. But as of now, we do not have a national level regulator, and the licensing and other regulatory things are enforced by the state licensing authorities. So it also becomes, a bit difficult to negotiate with the regulators of other countries in this case. So these are all the challenges in brief that I could jot down, and of course there is no denying the fact that the AYUSH sector is facing a lot of challenges at the front of international collaboration. But the Ministry of AYUSH, perhaps the youngest ministry in the Government of India, has been vibrant enough to carve out a niche for AYUSH systems in many countries across the globe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pradeep, for giving a very informative presentation. And one particular point I like very much, that integration and collaboration, it is all about creative ability, particularly for public health. So very good. Now, any questions? I think not questions, the queries to know more about AYUSH. Any questions?
Just one question, maybe about the right methodology. It's a little bit more about YOHA than about AYUSH. Is it okay to ask this question about the YOHA? So, I think the classical randomized control trial is designed to assess the effect of drugs versus the effect of the healing effect of the mind, which is the placebo effect. So now for YOHA, it's like looking at the healing effect of the mind as priority actually. So it's very difficult to design, to use this randomized control trials to assess the healing effect of the mind, because I think classically the healing effect of the mind, the placebo effect, is like considered a negative actually in randomized control trials. So I think if we want to really assess the effect of people looking for actively for the healing effect of the mind, it may be better to use cohort studies. So we look within the same community, people who actively look for using the healing potential of their mind versus those not using it. And then we prove within the same community that people using the healing, actively looking for the healing effect of the mind, and they are better off than those not using it. So I think cohort studies may be more, maybe a better way of proving that yoga is effective than randomized controlled trials. Because in randomized controlled trials, the skeptics will always say, okay, but is this placebo effect or is this yoga effect or this thing? So because here we're looking for something which is different from a drug effect. I think the effect we look for, whether people looking actively for the healing effect of the mind, whether they are better off than not. So I think
you are very much right actually. Randomized clinical trials are not ideal for such non-drug studies, you know. But there are a couple of evidences in USA where they have actually they have done a cohort study in people who are doing yoga and other physical activity related things. And as he has rightly suggested, they have found that they have observed increased feel-good factor among those people, mostly young generations, who practice it regularly. It was not a random. This is a very good suggestion as far as this yoga is concerned. But his topic was AYUSH drugs. So if anyone has got any queries about doing or not doing RCTs and what are the challenges faced by Ayurvedic drugs related RCTs, can ask questions. Your point is very good for this yoga.
We have one very good stalwart of traditional medicine researcher, Dr. Nandini Kumar, please.
I just want to highlight that AIIMS, Indian Council of Medical Research, has had this trial using traditional remedies for 20 years, more than that. So the randomized control trial is not the buzzword in traditional systems of medicine. You can try it, but if it is successful, fine. If it is not successful, we must realize that the reactions of the body are quite complex, and it may not be possible for statistical analysis to prove the worth of a particular formulation. So that we have learned, in a long stint of research with traditional medicine. So it is not necessary, what we learned was it is not necessary to have the randomized controlled trial, and even in the West, it has been observed that this is not the standard that you have to resort to all the time. Observational studies also can be done. So, if you want to test a particular formulation which is not exactly from the classical text, you make some combinations, then you can do a pilot study to see whether the effect of this new combination is okay for the body. But designing a study is very, very complex because, as it was highlighted here, it's a customized medicine. So how do you design a study where you have to have standardized controls? So when you get a negative result, you have to take it with some reservation. But when you have a positive result, it's definitely positive, whatever type of person you may be. We had this experience with the medicated thread for the use in anal fistula. It was a randomized trial, but even then, we got a success rate. We had actually with the anti-diabetic drug also, which was a randomized controlled trial. But the rest were, like in bronchial asthma, it was equal. Placebo, allopathic drug, as well as the formulation, Ayurvedic formulation, gave the same result. So what was wrong there? There must have been something there. Maybe our statistical methodology needs to be, over the years, that also has actually improved. Now we have new ways of analyzing.
Dr. Nandini, it has been rightly pointed out by you, but what is the problem there you ended, I think? I have identified one problem being a clinical trialist. Pradeep knows it, and Dr. Katoj knows it. We have kindly take your seat. I offer her a seat in front so that she can sit. So the problem is there, There is one medicinal plant in India which is, I don't know whether you know it, it's called Arjun. Terminal Arjuna, which is very commonly used by people with cardiac ailments. Very commonly used. Very much available in the market. It is a over-the-counter preparation. Even AYUSH has a standardized product for it. So we were asked to do an RCT on it, and in our institute we have done it a couple of years ago. It has been published in Phytomedicine. Anyone can see it. And it was a randomized control trial, 2 arms having the standard therapy, one arm having placebo, another the standardized extract. So, it is, the ultimate result was that there was no improvement in the primary outcome. Okay? But there are improvements in the secondary outcomes, which included quality of life. So, designing of a clinical trial, I would like to have your opinion also if time permits. Designing of a clinical trial in an Ayurvedic product is very, very difficult, because the way Ayurvedic physicians diagnose and assess prognosis of a patient is totally different from the way the modern medicine people do it. But you can debate that the disease is same, the patient is same, how it can be different. But are we putting a square peg in a round hole? Or a round peg in a square hole? This is the challenge. If we got improvement in quality of life in patients of heart failure without increase in the ejection fraction of the heart, which was the primary outcome. So now modern medicine people are rethinking, no longer ejection fraction is primary outcome measure in the modern heart failure trials. So that was a designing problem for us, which was done about 7-8 years ago. So they are also rethinking how to assess the patients of heart failure prognosis. But what we did find is the improvement of quality life, which matters a lot in patients of chronic disease conditions. So that is the answer for it. I think Professor Dr. Katoch has an important information to share before you come to this thing.
So recently, in our country, we are going to introduce this pharmacovigilance, the safety monitoring system for the AYUSH drugs. So that has been approved by the government, and it is going to be implemented. We are going to have this All India Institute of Ayurveda as the National Coordination Center for Pharmacovigilance of AYUSH drugs, and we will have intermediary center. We have National Institute for all systems. So those institutions will be the intermediary centers, and in the next 1 or 2 years, we will have around 100 peripheral centers to do the reporting of adverse reactions related to the one thing. Now, the point which Dr. Nandini has raised, definitely that RCTs are not possible, or rather these are difficult in traditional medicine, RCTs. But the well-designed observational studies and the cohort studies, I think that could be the answer. That could be the answer, and we are looking for that. Now I would request
Any of this, there is very Nandini.
Yeah, I actually you have highlighted one important point about observation of the quality of life, because you may not have improvement in the other parameters with the modern medicine indicators, but at the same time the quality of life may improve. So that is actually the target. Even in HIV, actually, it's not written in the classical text what HIV is, but the symptomatology have been described, and there's a particular terminology used in Ayurveda. So the medications that are used for that particular condition could be used in HIV. So such studies have been done, and the emphasis was on improvement of quality of life. So we need to actually modify whatever we are actually looking at for, because of the complexity of the customized medicine as well as the reaction of the body.
What is the need of anything else you want to? Because we have one minute more.
Yeah, just a short. I really appreciate your aggressive for your traditional. Like I think yoga or AYUSH is a concept. Like we have Tai Chi Yeah, I think it's quite the same.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let us think about this. Thank you.
You have a question? Can someone give him a microphone?
A very simple comment, because in Chinese herbal medicine and some of the Tai Chi or acupuncture and so forth, so many herbal medicines, complementary medicines exist in the world. But I just somewhat agree to the comment from you that the double-blind controlled trial is not workable for the herbal medicine. Because the double-blind controlled trial, really the situation doesn't happen in the real world. In the real world, no double-blind control methodology. So what we are doing, just using the observational trial. Observational trial, for example, in Taiwan, we have some of the, for diabetes, we're using the herbal medicine and mixed together and Western medicine. We just see a big population. We find it very interesting. Some people use the pure herbal medicine, some people use mixed together, and some are Western medicine. If you are matching by Western concept, by age, sex, duration, diabetes, and so forth. And you will find the herbal medicine people use the low-fat diet. I don't know why, but the blood pressure is lower. So I just emphasize the placebo-controlled, double-blind placebo-controlled trial. This Western style, this doesn't happen in the real world. Once you get into the real world, all the things changes. All the things changes. So how I just go back to the observation trial. Observation trial, you have a big population. And then to find out in everywhere, you can find if you have some use yoga and some not use yoga. If a population go to the 10,000, you might see some of the lifestyle different. And then we define
Your
what is lifestyle.
your observation is well taken, sir. Last question, anybody? Be brief. That's what very.
Thank you.
Yes.
Can I just, thank you for allowing me. The biggest challenge, I think one of the challenges that you have mentioned is the standardization of the formulation. That we should have good quality herbal medicine to test it in observational studies or to have well-designed clinical trials. Is there any move from the ministry to accreditate the labs which can provide such formulation, single formulations or multi-drug formulation? Because we have this as a major hurdle when we want to plan studies, interventional studies with herbal formulation. Whom to approach and from where to get, and whether it would be matching WHO standards. If you want to design a good study and come out of good outcome from that research, formulation standardization is a big problem with good biomarkers. So is there any such?
Yes, the Ministry of AYUSH, we have published pharmacopoeia, Ayurveda, Siddha, Unani pharmacopoeias, and those pharmacopoeias, even the compound formulation, these multi-ingredient formulation, those are also standardized. And along with that, this fingerprint, we are using this fingerprint technology, so that markers, these are also included in the pharmacopoeia.
But the sources and manufacturers, whom we should approach, standards are well set. I understand.
So for the research purpose, you can approach our research councils, because research councils, they have their own manufacturing units. So for the research purpose, you can take the formulations from them. You can collaborate with the research council. Or otherwise, we have.
Is there a system of accreditation? Was my question.
No, it is not there.
That would be appealing to even international collaborators that we have taken from this.
Yes, it is not there. It is not there, but it is a good suggestion that we will try to explore it.
Thank you.
So can I
Last question. Last question. He has been. I know there will be many questions.
So can I answer this question?
Yes.
Madam, addressing to your query, there are certain other mechanisms also from where you can procure the drug. Like for example, I said in the presentation, we have WHO GMP certified companies also which are manufacturing these drugs. So perhaps a greater credibility can be addressed to these companies, and many of these companies are in the process of being certified and inspected for this reason. Secondly, there is a provision from the Quality Council of India that is called AYUSH Premium Mark and AYUSH Standard Mark. So there are several products which are specifically inspected and all investigations done, and if found at par with the international standards, they are given the AYUSH Premium Mark. So again, that adds to the credibility of these products. Third, there is a provision of certification of testing laboratories. So Ministry of AYUSH is also doing under the Drugs and Cosmetics Rules 1945, under Rule 160, AYUSH has certified, accredited several laboratories, 54 of them across the country as of now. So they are accredited, certified for testing AYUSH products. So we have two statutory laboratories also, as I said in my presentation, Pharmacopoeia Laboratory of Indian Medicine and the Homeopathic Pharmacopoeia Laboratory. So with all these, and as sir has said that we have 5 research councils, so to whatever research council your product pertains to, your product pertains to, you can of course seek guidance from them. So with all these, although limited and still evolving resources, there are still sites from where you can procure.
So last question, I know we are already, time is over. Please.
I am an Ayurvedic personnel. I want to ask that as you have told that Arjuna, Terminalia Arjuna, has been studied and it has been established as a phytomedicine. But as a Ayurvedic personnel, I want to ask that if it is phytomedicine, then are we entitled to prescribe it as a practitioner? First thing is that. And if it is established as a phytomedicine, then what is the benefit of Ayurveda? What is the benefit of Ayurveda in that sense? Because every medicine,
Okay, we have got your question. So first question is that whether you can. If you are an Ayurvedic physician, you can, because Ayurvedic physicians keep prescribing it. That is a well-established fact. That is for the years. And second is that why phytomedicine? Because phytomedicine is interested in publications of clinical trials as part of their major objectives. Clinical trials with traditional medicine as well as phytomedicinal products, which are standardized. So that was the reason we published it, because you will find many similar publications on medicinal plant products in phytomedicine. That's the answer. We are very glad to conclude this session, which was very, very interesting and very interactive. We thank our co-chairs, Dr. Katoch and Dr. Sang Shi from Taiwan, sir. Thank you very much, delegates and the speakers. We can join for tea.
Thank you, everyone. With this, we have come to the end of first session. And before ending, I would just like to thank our chair, Dr. Thang Sing Zi, he is the president, Taiwan Association Institutional Review Board, and Dr. D.C. Katoch, who is an advisor to Ministry of AYUSH, and Dr. Maulik, organizing secretary. I also request each and everyone to please put your hands together for our chair and the speakers as well. Follow under this session. The next session will start at 10:30, and the theme of the next session will be challenges to members of ethics committees, and we will assemble here at 10:30 sharp. And I request all the speakers of next session to please give your presentation so that the presentation will be ready.